Alright guys, welcome back. In this video we are going to talk about the heated steering wheel and how it actually functions in the S550 car and sort of a plan to make it work in the S197. So what you see on the screen here is a very basic view of what the clock spring assembly, what all of the different functions and parts of the S550 car and how they work. So you have your four switches that we've gone over, right? Your Bluetooth, cruise control, information, and media/audio. You have your paddle shifters. And then we have one last thing here called a thermistor, which I'll get into in a minute. From a clock spring perspective, remember, the clock spring has 5 plugs on it. It's got your wheel side, C218B. It's got your dash side, C218A. It's got a 10-pin connector that would normally go into the steering column control module. And then it's got these 2 dedicated C218CD and C218C connectors that go from, the wheel side and the dash side for the heating element. From there, all of these actually go into the steering column control module. Really, that one connector that on the S197 controls everything really only controls your illumination and your ground and your airbag. And then there's the thermistor. But so we have a couple different things we have to deal with. Oh, real quick. The thermistor, what is the function of that? The thermistor, think of it like a heat cutoff. Once the heating element inside the steering wheel gets too hot, the thermistor will cut off the heat so that it won't get too hot for you to touch. So we need to take this and we need to translate it into something that will work for the S197. Now there's 4 major problems that I've listed on the bottom here. Okay? The first one is we need to run power from the fuse box to the steering wheel so we can actually heat the steering wheel. That's actually going to be an easy one. Very, very simple. We just put an add a fuse in and run a line. The second one, and this is arguably the most difficult, is because the S197 doesn't have a heating element and there's no leftover wires in the clock spring, we have 2 options. We can either go with the S550 clock spring or we can add ribbon cable to the S197 clock spring. The problem is the ribbon cable for the heating element is actually significantly different than the ribbon cable for the rest of the S197 clock spring. I don't feel comfortable enough adding that type of heating element clock spring ribbon cable to the clock spring. So what I'm opting to do is going with the S550 clock spring because generally speaking, it already has everything it needs in order to function. It's got the 2 separate plugs for the heating element. It's already pre-wired for 90% of what is needed. There's one catch though. In order to use the clock spring from the S550, we also have to use the S550 clock spring assembly, which means we're going to go from one multifunction switch in the S197 to the 2 stalks, right? Headlights high beams and turn signals and wipers that live inside of the S550. Well, those actually use a steering column control module. So we're going to have to find a way, just like we did with the Bluetooth, cruise control, info control, and audio, we're going to need to find a way to fake those signals into thinking it's an S197. Finally, we need to make sure that clock spring assembly actually fits in the car, because it may not fit because the clusters are different. The next problem we have, if you look at this plug up here, right, and you recall from all of the things we've discussed, the S550 only utilizes 6 wires, these 3 and these 3, for all of these controls. So 6. However, the S197 needs 8. if you look at this, there is nowhere left to add 2 extra wires in. The pin number 3 and pin number 10 don't exist. So because they don't exist, we either need to add a ribbon cable or sacrifice some sort of functionality from here. Now, for anyone who's got a manual car and is not using the paddle shifters, you can sacrifice those, add your 2 wires in, and you'll be solid, you'll be good to go. Well, that doesn't work for me, and I'll explain why in a second. We'll go back to this one. The S550 turns the heated steering wheel on and off by means of the digital screen in the center console. So there's no switch that we could borrow from the S550 and put in the S197. The S197 doesn't have a switch at all, nor does it have a digital switch in the nav. So we need to create our own switch to turn on and off the heated steering wheel. And personally speaking, I don't like invasive switches that are like physically drilled in somewhere. They never actually really look good. So I was brainstorming this for a while, and I thought of something. What if I use the paddle shifters as buttons to turn on and off the heating element? It will look stock. It will look like it's on the car. Won't really be that invasive. It's something that, will look natural, OEM. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to repurpose the paddle shifters to turn on and off the heating element. But because of that, because I'm keeping those paddle shifters, I don't have any extra wires in here. So I'm going to need to add in a ribbon cable to support my thermistors, because my thermistors are going to get bumped out when I repurpose these all to function for the S197 controls. So these are 3 big problems, or 4 big problems we have. These are the things I'm going to tackle in the future, and I hope you stick around for the adventure that this is going to be. I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.